So by the summer of 2008, version 1.5 Amethyst Mountain Deluxe was out there in the wild, people playing it. And it turns out that there's a fair number of people who want to play a game as a wolf. And our flawed, little, incomplete game was about the only game in town.
I discovered the game in about January 2008. And I remember when I saw it, I was so thrilled that there was a video game about wolves.
Especially back in 2007, when there weren't really that many games of that kind out, was absolutely huge.
And every day, people kept finding it, downloading it, playing it over and over, even though there isn't that much to do in version 1 or 1.5. You hunt some elk, you find a mate. You hunt some elk, you find a mate.
So I remember I got to the point where I could complete the entirety of the Amethyst Mountain mission under 15 minutes.
It was pretty amazing how creative people could get with how little we had in the game so far.
And really the attraction, I think, for most people was the community.
They formed relationships both in the forums, before Facebook and all these other huge social media platforms exploded. They used the multiplayer environment just to socialize and hang out.
Sometimes talking about wolves, usually not, but occasionally about the game and wolves and educational things.
Yeah.
But I feel like people found a community there. It really was a community that people could be with people who shared similar interests.
Our community coordinators and our moderators, they've done a really nice job of making the community feel like a welcoming place.
And I received lots of emails from people who said they felt like they could be themselves and they met lifelong friends there. And
that was the other thing, was the fan art. I was not prepared for just the amount of art that people were creating and wanting to share. Everyone just loved drawing the wolves.
And they're so talented. I was amazed at what some people came up with. And sometimes they would have everything realistic except it had an earring. And they say, oh, it's like a tag, it's fine. Or it would have a patch of purple fur, or a moon shape on their leg. It's a natural birthmark.
Yeah.
Yes.
We also got word that Senator Tom Coburn had included WolfQuest in his annual government waste book, selecting the top 50 or whatever worst uses of government money. The game got a couple other awards, but that one was my favorite.
We, of course, were trying to make this game a game that kids ages 10 to 16, even a little younger, a little older, could play and be comfortable, and their parents would be relatively comfortable with them playing. So we decided early on that we were going to filter out naughty words.
The lexicon and the bad words list. I learned so many bad words through WolfQuest that I had never heard of before.
It was funny because I never really thought of Slough Creek as the second level, because when we originally envisioned the game, it was always going through pups. That was always the plan.
Actually, we had not even planned to do episodes originally, but in the summer of 2007, halfway through Amethyst Mountain development, and we had an unmovable release date at the end of the year, and we just knew we weren't going to get it all done. And so I said, about episodes, let's do episodes.
And then had to get extension on the grant and get a little bit of additional money so that we could realize the full scope of the storyline we wanted.
So with this additional money, WolfQuest could survive for another day. So we got some artists working on the pup models, and we started designing the Slough Creek quests. But wolves sleep 16 hours a day, and the rest of their time, as much as possible, they just want to lay around. So we're really worried about how to make the game fun and exciting. So we asked our advisors, Dave Meach, Laurie Schmidt, and Dan McNulty, for all their ideas. What challenges and dangers do wolves face as parents? They gave us some suggestions, and we just rammed in the threats, the hazards. You got stranger wolves coming at your den. You got a grizzly bear coming at your den. You got coyotes coming at your den. And if you want to play at a harder difficulty, then they're just going to come more often.
And then we You added an eagle just to add some extra fun for the pups and possibility of drowning in the river.
I find Slough Creek an exhausting level, which, you know, it's like parenthood, right? You know, it's like, I gotta mark the territory, I gotta run and go get food, I gotta feed the pups, oh, the pups are wandering away, I gotta pull them back.
It's dangerous to be a wolf pup. And I think the players found that out when they played the game.
It feels like parenting when you are raising those pups.
It's a little intense, yeah.
So yeah, we wanted drama, we wanted intensity, and so once again we were thrilled to have Tim Buzza back doing the game music.
Well, one of my favorite collaborations of that piece of Slough Creek was the bear attack. Because Ben is doing crazy stuff and I'm adding some crazy stuff on guitar, and then I got behind the drum kit and started to play around. It happens on this floor tom, and that was really fun. That piece came together well. That sounded like a bear attack. I was frightened, so it was good.
We came in thinking we might face some people who had some negative stereotypes about wolves that we could correct, like, oh, wolves are bloodthirsty killers, they kill everything that moves. What I didn't realize was we had people, a lot of people, who had an overly kind of rose-colored glasses view of wolves and the environment, and didn't like to hear about the messier stuff, the fact that they actually do kill, do sometimes go into cattle ranches and sheep ranches nearby and kill cattle and sheep.
So this is only 10 years after the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone, and wolf predation on sheep and livestock was still a huge issue. And we knew we wanted to deal with it. But just after the release of Amethyst Mountain, initially we got an email from the executive director of the Montana Wool Growers Association. He said, I am concerned that you might not be portraying the wolf problem that ranchers have in Montana properly. Hundreds of dollars of personal property are lost to wolf predation every year, causing economic hardship for ranchers that are trying to make a living. Please consider punishing players for attacking sheep, cattle, or horses. So we'd already been talking about how to represent this issue in the game, but how do you do that? Wolves kill cattle for food, not for fun. Do we actually want to create a situation where players kill cattle for fun? What would that be? A mini game? Should it be fun? How do you make players get the point while still enjoying playing a game?
That was a big kind of question mark. Like, do we really want to do this? Are the players gonna be okay with that? We built in the added risk of getting shot in that level by an unnamed person off screen. These are the real challenges that wolves deal with.
Devs didn't tell us what the cattle ranch would do. So I thought it'd be fun to explore it and hunt some cows and walking along, and then all of a sudden, boom. And I must have jumped about a foot out of my chair.
Having that gunshot come out of the blue like that worked great, both as a shock to the player, it would be a shock to a real wolf too, and also for a budget. We knew that players would want to creep around, battle, or outsmart the rancher, but we never wanted to introduce that human element into the game. So, bang, and we're done here.
I don't take too much credit for any specific element of WolfQuest, but I do take credit for this. I was the person who came up with the idea that when you do the marking of territory where you pee on a rock, I came up with the idea that to make that happen, you push the P key. That's me. I'll take that credit.
Gore and peeing.
Yeah, gore
And
and peeing.
peeing. That.
And mating.
Gore, peeing, and mating.
Yeah.
Yes.
This was the biggest thing we'd ever done. There's so many pieces and they have to all work together. So many new animals, attacking the pups, all this stuff.
Eagle or the grizzly bear or the coyotes, and all of those creatures can come and interact at the same time. So just because you made rules for each of those characters to behave in a certain way, when they start interacting, they may not do what you thought they were going to do.
So many bugs. It felt like an endless treadmill.
We never were quite getting the game out at the time our players wanted us to get the game out.
I thought of, Douglas Adams' line, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing noise they make as they go by. But I did not love that whooshing noise.
We often weren't getting the game out in the time we wanted to get the game out.
So the community was amazing. Their enthusiasm, their passion, they're just so looking forward to Slough Creek. And it was a lot, and I just felt that pressure. So I just kept my head down, let Michelle and then Leah manage the forum and the community, and just focused on the game.
How to break it to players that the release date was going to be a little more fluid than anticipated.
But we finally pulled the trigger, released Slough Creek on January 2nd, 2010.
The camera pans over the scenery to your wolf and their mate standing on this little hill, and you can't help but sit and absorb it for a minute because it's Slough Creek, it's Slough Creek, it's here, and that on its own was very exciting. Then you set out from that starting point on Little Butte to pick a den to raise your pups in, and you chase off that first bear or whatever it is that comes, and it clicks into place that there is a lot going on here, and it leaves you excited and wondering what's next.
I mean, people always have critique, oh, I wish they would have added this, I wish they would have added that, but I think overall people were pretty pleased with what came out, especially with how much more storyline was added to the game.
Well, we weren't quite done yet. We got a bit more funding to make version 2.5, and for the first time, we solicited player ideas for the game. And there were a lot of them. This was our first foray into asking for player ideas and integrating them. We made a list of ideas, put it up for a vote, and we on the team thought that bison were going to come out on top, but actually changing times of day and changing weather were the top ones that we could afford to do. So those added a lot of nice ambience to the game, and bison herds are still on our list of things to add. So grant-funded projects are great until the money runs out, which we always knew would happen, but still.
Well, and we were always a little hopeful that maybe more funding would come in. We had so many great ideas for the game that hadn't been incorporated yet, and that we thought the players would really enjoy.
But at a certain point, the money runs out, and you have to kind of figure out how to sunset your project, or in this case, we knew we wanted to kind of keep it running, but keep it running at kind of a maintenance level.
Breaking it to players that there may not be more was difficult. I remember writing the newsletter and forum posts.
We planned all along for a 5-year project lifespan, 5-year grant, 5-year project, but it's hard when those 5 years are up and you don't feel like you really reached the potential of the game. Well, we put up some Google ads to pay for the server and some minor maintenance costs. The game was still available for download, and our amazing volunteer moderators kept the forum going. But that was the end of the original WolfQuest team.
And so I actually ended up getting another job and moving to another zoo. I'm now at the Oregon Zoo in Portland, Oregon.
It was hard for me too. WolfQuest was my life for 4 years almost, so it was difficult.
But it was still sad. I mean, this game's been part of my life for how many years? But I figured all good things must come to an end, so it was WolfQuest's time.
I can't imagine after seeing the fever of the start of things, having to like you say, kind of turn off the lights, like wind things down.
But people kept playing it.
Hello everyone and welcome back to WolfQuest. We are here with Luna and her tiny little Luna Moon pack.
Siri the Pixel Biologist started playing the game on YouTube. She and other YouTubers like Yogscast kept bringing people to the game. A dead game, an abandoned game. And I thought, this is the most successful thing I've done in my career. It's crazy just to let it fade away. So I thought maybe we can port it to iPad, sell it for a few bucks, recoup that investment. I started working with a really good new Unity programmer on some client projects. So I said, hey Tom, what do you think of this?
When Dave first asked me to work on WolfQuest, my first thought was, yay, wolves. My second thought was, oh no, trees.
We did some tests of the game on iPhone and iPad, and yeah, those devices back then had trouble rendering the forest. But still, there's potential here.
To be perfectly honest, I was a little skeptical about putting quite that much work on the version 2.7 of WolfQuest.
So I said, let's set mobile aside for the moment. Technology is always improving, right? And let's do some bug fixes, some visual upgrades.
The code had lived through quite a few iterations already. Many different people had worked on it, and well, you could tell.
Maybe we could even improve the mate AI.
I did tell Dave that sure we could make these changes, but are you sure? Are you sure it's worth it? It was going to be an effort to make even small changes in a robust manner that doesn't introduce any new bugs and such.
Well, I persuaded Tommy that it'd be worth the effort. So he started working on some code fixes and improvements while I did some visual improvements to the terrain and the environment. And back in the early days, Grant and I would joke about doing a post-apocalyptic map. So I thought, that'd be a neat extra in this new version. Gotta have something totally new to tempt people to buy the game. I had pictured this back then as a couple of wolves trotting around a post-apocalyptic New York City. And I started to make a map like that, but it just felt wrong. It wasn't WolfQuest. So I started thinking about all those small towns in Wyoming and Montana that we passed through on the way to Yellowstone. But then, well, why would all the people have disappeared? Some kind of disaster, I guess. So then I started adding various things, how humans have messed with nature, a big hydroelectric dam, petroleum extraction, a molecular engineering facility. I was going to add nuclear plant cooling towers, but that seems a little bit of overkill for such a small town. But even with these things, you're living the life of Wild Wolf. It still felt like WolfQuest.
I remember playing through it for the first time just going, oh my gosh, like this, it was so unlike anything that we'd interacted with before. It was a completely new side to the game. And I think that was something that a lot of people really appreciated, and that really helped renew interest in the game with the return of 2.7.
So I thought this iPad port would take a couple months, 3, maybe 4. It took us nearly 2 years to get WolfQuest 2.7 ready for release, and that didn't even include the mobile versions.
Is WolfQuest for you? Well, do you love animals? Love them so much that you just want to eat them right up? Then WolfQuest might be for you.
Susan and I, as EduWeb, sunk a good chunk of money into 2.7, but we were pretty confident that it would pay off. And this was a fascinating experience for me. I've always had fixed budgets, whatever the grant would allow, that's it, no more. But now it was a whole new ball game. We sell the game, people buy the game, we get the revenues which we can use to keep developing the game further. Mind blown. And now we can do extra things not essential to the core educational goals of the game, things like extra wolf coats, and charge for them. More revenues, more game development. So over time we added cougars, we added wildflowers, we added butterflies and moths, we added birdsong, we added moose, we added floppy. Hard to believe now, but we released 2.7 initially with only phrase chat in public games and multiplayer. Because in the old game, we couldn't hold people accountable, and if need be ban them because they could just make a new game account. But now we had paying customers who had something to lose, their account. You only get one with your purchase. And so we could really consider how to do this properly. Of course, that means that somebody has to hold them accountable.
So I was not new to WolfQuest. I am married to Dave, so I had been there since the beginning, and it was a huge part of our family life. We went on Yellowstone trips, we hiked up to the fossil forest, we all waited around the Christmas tree while Dave was fixing server issues. WolfQuest had just been in our family life for years. So when Dave asked me, I said, sure. It's a little different getting to know a gaming community through doing abuse reports and making sure that people are following the rules. But it didn't take very long for me to realize what a great community WolfQuest was, and to really fall in love with the quirky, creative, just really kind community that had grown up around the game.
So WolfQuest 2.7 was a success. People bought the game, people kept buying the game.
Ultimately, it turned out it was worth it.
It was successful in every way but one. We wanted to develop another episode, take the game into fall and winter when the pups start learning to hunt, but we had hit the wall with what we could do with this code base.
We needed to rewrite the whole code base.
A new, clean code base that replicated the original game, but gave us a solid, clean foundation for further development and continuing the story of the pack. And we'd actually already been doing some work on a new code base for this kind of thing, so we thought, bring it to WolfQuest. How long would it take? 6 months? 6 months. Maybe 7.